Hey everybody, I thought I'd show you my new prototype. It's called Hex Painting, and it's a way of creating spaceships that's a lot faster but also a lot more nuanced than you normally get. So the basic idea is that you don't paint with a specific module. You don't place down, the Tiberian engine. You paint with a brush. So this propulsion brush is automatically filled with all of the kinds of propulsion that this space dock can produce. And when you paint with it, it chooses the kinds of propulsion that make sense given what you're painting. So here you can see that it's gone ahead and it's figured out what kind of propulsion makes sense, and it's let us just slap that propulsion down. If we change over to, say, power, we can paint the power in too, and you can see that it overrides whatever was there before, and it puts in whatever power makes sense. And you can even have modules that aren't simply 1 by 1. So this module here, for example, is 1 by 2, and that's something you'll never see if you try and place power here. You'll never see that module because there's no spot for it. So the heuristic is still very primitive at the moment, but you get the basic idea. You can very rapidly put down the kinds of things that you'd like to see on your ship, and then it'll figure out what sort of modules make sense from the current dry dock, the current space dock that you're using. And you can just do that for everything. So for example, here's some cargo. And if you want some comms, you just select comms, and there's some comms. And then you can also put in some crew here at the front, right? And that way you can quickly figure out the sorts of setups that make sense for your specific ship and get them to do exactly what you want them to do. Now, there's still a lot of polishing left to do. This is a very primitive sort of arrangement at the moment, but I hope it's clear what this does. It allows you to create ships that are as nuanced as you'd like. And the other half of this is that these hull segments are also something that you can customize. Now, the NPCs will be happy to slap together some hull segments for you based on what their dry dock can actually build, but you can always tweak it. And the reason that's important is because there are times when you're going to want to have specific kinds of hulls. For example, if you want to have a huge engine on the back, this isn't going to cut it. There's no place to put a huge engine back here. These are just 3 completely distinct connectors. They're great for locking into another piece, and that's what this is for. This is called a wishbone connector. So you can see that this connects to the exact matching on the back. But if you wanted an engine that was big, like, a massive engine, you'd want to have a different configuration. You'd want to have a different hull piece there. And that's where a lot of the player customization comes in. It's half choosing what hull pieces and half painting the modules in. But that's not the only reason that I like this. Sure, it's a fast way to paint a ship, but it's also a really, really great way to make sure that you and the rest of the universe, you and the game, are on the same page. Because the game understands the context in which you built this ship, and you understand the context, and you both understand it in more or less the same way. So if you were to take this ship and you were to assign it with some propulsion back here, you might then say, okay, well, I'm going to sell this ship and anybody can build it now as long as I get my cut, right? And you might see these ships pour into the universe. This might be the hot new ship. But they're not all going to be this ship, because not all shipyards have the same capabilities. So when you reach a ship that's from a different shipyard, it might be the same class of ship, but it's going to be their variant. And maybe they don't use hull thrusters. Maybe they use magic space dust thrusters. And they'll simply substitute them in because they understand that this is a thruster spot. And their thruster brush might be different than the one you used, but the same heuristics apply. Similarly, if you have a cargo ship and you're using these huge cargo pieces that go out into space like this, well, maybe the pirates don't want that because that's really vulnerable to fire. So they have a different kind of cargo brush. They still want the cargo because that's the point of the ship, but they can't really afford to have it sticking out like that. So they'll go ahead and replace that with an inset cargo piece like this. And when they tell you that they've done that, you'll understand it. If there's a person aboard the pirate ship and that person goes, oh, this is a Type 86 freighter, you go, oh, yeah, I built those. And they'll go, yeah, but we replaced those giant external cargo bays with some little internal ones for safety's sake. And the player will go, oh, that makes sense. And it wouldn't have been the right choice for the player's version because the player didn't have to worry about getting their cargo shot off. But it makes perfect sense for a pirate version or whatever else you're trying to build. And because these heuristics are fairly flexible, you can have it so that any given group will have their own heuristics and will be able to explain why they've changed the modules around or why they don't have a specific module and use different modules instead. And that might be tech-based, it might be culture-based, it might be because their ship is built for a slightly different kind of encounter. But both you and the game, the player and the game, both understand the context of this ship, and they both understand the context of changes made to this ship. And that means that these ships can explain to the player what the situation is. If this ship rolls up and it's got this indented cargo slot instead of the sticky outy cargo slot, the player will know what's up. The player will say, okay, that ship replaced its external cargo bays with an internal cargo bay. They're worried about getting shot at. And the ship, turns out that's exactly what was happening. The heuristic replaced the external cargo bays with the internal cargo bays because they were worried about getting shot at. And if you talk to the people aboard, they might say that. And that means that every single ship can tell a story. Every single ship can explain why it's there, what it's doing, what its history is, what the priorities of the people aboard are. And that's incredibly powerful. You built this ship, and the game comes right back, and it says, yeah, this ship is a blockade runner now, and you're in a blockade runner story. And I think that this is the only method of building ships I've ever seen that allows that to happen. And that's why I like it. Anyway, go ahead and leave your comments below. Tell me whether you think I'm wrong or right or whatever. And keep in mind that this is a very early prototype of it. It's got a lot of places to go before it gets anywhere near ready to sail. But the heuristics are already starting to shine and things are starting to come together.